Famous polyglot told Maid's daughter to translate a rare language. Unaware, she's a genius linguist. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's incredible tale. It all started in a lavish conference hall, filled with some of the brightest minds in the field of linguistics. The room was adorned with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city skyline, gleaming chandeliers hanging from the ceiling like jewels. In the center of the room, a famous polyglot, known for speaking over 50 languages fluently, was hosting a prestigious event. Guests from around the world were gathered, eager to listen to his insights on rare languages. As the polyglot introduced himself, his gaze swept across the audience, but little did he know, a young girl in the corner of the room was about to leave him speechless. Lena, a 12-year-old girl, sat quietly at the back of the room, unnoticed by the distinguished guests. She wasn't supposed to be there. She had come with her mother, who worked as a housekeeper for one of the event's organizers. Lena had been told to stay out of sight, to be as invisible as possible. But Lena wasn't just any ordinary girl. Although her life was humble, there was something extraordinary about her. Her mother had always said, "Keep your head down, Lena, and don't draw attention to yourself." She had followed that advice her entire life. But deep down, Lena knew she wasn't just another girl. She had a gift, one that had been hidden from the world. As the polyglot spoke about the complexities of languages, he announced a challenge to the audience. "I'll give anyone here the chance to translate a rare language, one that only a few people in the world can understand. If you can do it, I'll personally endorse your linguistic skills and offer a generous reward." The room fell silent. The polyglot's reputation was untouchable, and anyone who accepted his challenge would be risking their credibility. But, as he scanned the crowd, his eyes fell on Lena. He didn't know who she was or why she was sitting in the back, but a mischievous smile appeared on his face. "How about you, young lady?" he asked, pointing at Lena. "Can you translate this?" He handed her an ancient scroll written in a language that most people would struggle to even recognize. The guests laughed softly, assuming it was all a joke. After all, how could a housekeeper's daughter possibly know anything about such a rare language? Lena's heart raced. She had never expected to be called out in front of such an audience. The laughter echoed around her, but something inside her urged her to stand up. Slowly, she walked to the front of the room, took the scroll from the polyglot, and began to study it. The moment her fingers brushed the paper, she knew this wasn't just any language. It was a lost dialect that her late grandfather, a renowned linguist, had taught her to decipher. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Lena began to translate, her voice steady and confident. She didn't just read the words. She brought them to life, weaving intricate meanings that no one else in the room could grasp. The polyglot's expression shifted from amusement to shock. He had no idea how this girl, a mere maid's daughter, could understand the language so fluently. As she finished her translation, the room was silent, except for the sound of a single dropped jaw. "This is impossible," the polyglot muttered, his eyes wide with disbelief. Lena had not only proven herself as a linguistic genius, but she had also stunned everyone, including the polyglot, who now realized that he had underestimated her from the very start. The guests were speechless, and Lena stood there, still in disbelief of her own bravery. She had shown them all that talent could be hidden in the most unexpected places, and no one should ever be judged by their background or appearance. As Lena stood in front of the audience, still processing the whirlwind of emotions coursing through her, the polyglot's words echoed in her mind. "This is impossible." Those words, spoken with such disbelief, were all she could hear as the crowd remained frozen in awe. She had just done something unimaginable, something that not only proved her abilities, but shattered the assumptions of everyone in the room. For the first time, Lena felt a sense of pride in herself. But she wasn't ready to celebrate yet. She had to see how this moment would unfold. The polyglot slowly stepped forward, his expression now a mixture of admiration and surprise. He extended his hand to Lena, his voice calm but filled with awe. "I must admit, I was wrong. You have a rare gift, young lady." The crowd, still silent, watched as Lena hesitated for a moment before shaking his hand. "Thank you," she replied quietly, her voice barely audible but full of determination. Despite the praise, Lena's mind raced. This wasn't just a victory for her. It was a moment of validation that she never imagined she'd experience in such a public way. But Lena was no stranger to being underestimated. She had spent her life in the shadows, never given a chance to shine. And now, with just a few words, she had exposed her hidden talents to the world. The polyglot smiled, clearly impressed. "You've done something extraordinary. I think you deserve more than just a compliment. How about a scholarship to study linguistics at a prestigious university?" The words hit Lena like a wave. A scholarship. The chance to study something she loved, something that had always been her escape from the challenges of her daily life. It was a dream that she had kept locked away, far from the reach of reality. Now, standing before her, it seemed like that dream was within grasp. But Lena's heart was heavy with a mix of emotions. She had never thought of herself as someone who could go to college. Her life had always been about survival, helping her mother, keeping quiet, staying invisible. But this moment was different. This was her chance to break free from the limitations she had been living under. The polyglot continued. "I believe you have a future in this field, Lena. Your abilities are remarkable. You could change the world with your knowledge of languages." As the crowd slowly came back to life, applauding and murmuring in admiration, Lena stood there, her thoughts swirling. She had proven herself in front of a room full of experts, but she wasn't sure if she was ready for the next step. The scholarship offer was a dream come true, but it also came with a weight of expectations she wasn't sure she was ready to carry. The polyglot's words had been kind, but they also held a truth that Lena wasn't sure she could handle. Could she really live up to the potential he saw in her? Could she walk away from her mother, from everything she knew, and step into a future she had never allowed herself to believe in? As the applause died down and the reality of the moment began to sink in, Lena knew one thing for sure. Her life would never be the same. She had just stepped into a new chapter, one filled with possibilities she had never considered. But with that came the responsibility to face the future, to prove that she was not just the maid's daughter, not just a quiet, invisible girl, but someone capable of changing the world with the talents she had always kept hidden. Lena stood at the edge of a new reality, the weight of the scholarship offer pressing down on her shoulders. Her mind raced as she tried to process what had just happened. A few hours ago, she was just a girl cleaning floors, doing her best to remain unnoticed, and now, she had been offered the chance to change her life forever. But with this new opportunity came a sense of responsibility that felt overwhelming. The applause had barely faded when Lena's thoughts shifted back to her mother. She knew her mother had sacrificed so much for her to have the little they did, and now Lena was faced with a choice. She could take the scholarship, pursue her dreams, and leave the only life she had ever known, or she could stay and continue helping her mother, living a life that felt so familiar but increasingly distant from the future she could now see. As she walked out of the conference hall, the polyglot's words echoed in her mind. You could change the world with your knowledge of languages. Was she really capable of that? She had never seen herself as someone who could make an impact like that. She was just the daughter of a maid, someone who had always been told to keep her head down, to blend in with the background. But now, everything had changed. Lena's head was spinning. She hadn't expected this kind of recognition. She hadn't expected to be thrust into a world that seemed so out of reach, so different from everything she had known. As she sat in the back of the car with her mother, the city lights flashing by outside, Lena felt a lump form in her throat. She looked at her mother, who had been quiet for most of the ride, her face reflecting the weariness of a long day's work. "Mom," Lena began softly, her voice barely audible. "I've been offered a scholarship. I can study linguistics at a university." Her mother looked at her with a mix of confusion and surprise. "What do you mean, a scholarship?" she asked, her voice shaky. Lena took a deep breath, her heart pounding. "A famous polyglot offered it to me after I translated a rare language during his lecture." Her mother's eyes widened, but there was no sign of joy, no look of pride in her face. Instead, her expression darkened, and she reached out to gently hold Lena's hand. "Lena, are you sure? This is a huge opportunity, but it means leaving everything behind. You'll have to go far away, and I won't be there with you." Lena's heart clenched. She had never imagined that her mother might feel this way. She had always been the one to support her, to encourage her to do better, but now it seemed that Lena's success was pulling them apart. "I know, Mom," Lena said, her voice cracking with emotion. "But this is my chance to make something of myself. It's everything I've dreamed of, but I don't want to leave you." There was a long silence before her mother finally spoke, her voice soft but filled with a sense of resolve. "Lena, I've always wanted the best for you. If this is what you truly want, then I will support you. I just want you to be happy, to know that you have the power to choose your path. But promise me one thing. Don't forget where you came from. Don't forget that no matter where you go, you'll always be my daughter." Tears welled up in Lena's eyes as she hugged her mother tightly. In that moment, she realized that her journey was no longer just about her. It was about honoring her mother's sacrifices, about proving to both herself and her mother that she could succeed on her own terms. She had always believed that her future was limited by her circumstances, but now, for the first time, she saw that the future was hers to shape. As the car drove through the streets of the city, Lena made a promise to herself. She would take the scholarship. She would go to university, and she would prove to the world that she was more than just the maid's daughter. She was someone capable of making a difference. With her mother's blessing and her heart full of determination, Lena was ready to step into the future that awaited her. Lena's heart was still heavy with the weight of her decision as she packed her bags. The scholarship, the chance to study at a prestigious university, was the opportunity of a lifetime, but the uncertainty about what lay ahead kept her awake at night. She had never been far from home, and now, she was about to leave the only life she had ever known. Her mother's blessing had been the final push Lena needed, but still, doubts lingered. Was she truly ready for this? Could she survive in a world so different from the one she had grown up in? The days leading up to her departure were filled with a mix of excitement and fear. The thought of studying linguistics, of immersing herself in a world of languages and knowledge, filled her with a sense of purpose she had never felt before. But each time she looked at her mother, the reality of leaving home sank in. Her mother had always been there for her, guiding her through every obstacle, supporting her when no one else did. Lena felt like she was about to step into the unknown, leaving her mother behind to face the struggles alone. But her mother, ever the source of strength, reassured her. "Lena, this is your time. You've earned this," she said, her voice filled with both pride and sorrow. "I've always known you were meant for something more than this life. Go and make the most of it." With those words, Lena knew there was no turning back. On the day she left, the sun was shining brightly, casting a warm glow over the city. As she walked through the airport with her mother by her side, Lena couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. It was as if she was leaving a piece of herself behind, but she knew that she had to take this step. She was no longer the girl who stayed in the shadows. She was about to step into a new world, one that would challenge her, shape her, and help her realize her full potential. At the university, Lena was welcomed by a world of opportunity. The campus was vast, with beautiful buildings, green spaces, and students from all walks of life. It was overwhelming at first, but Lena quickly found solace in her studies. She threw herself into her courses, fascinated by the complexities of language, the power it had to connect people and cultures. But as the weeks went by, Lena began to feel the weight of isolation. She had never been surrounded by so many people, but she felt invisible in a different way now. The other students, many of whom came from wealthy families, seemed to have an ease about them that Lena couldn't quite grasp. They had grown up with opportunities she had never known, and it felt like a barrier she couldn't cross. But Lena wasn't the type to back down from a challenge. She remembered her mother's words, "Make the most of it." Slowly, she began to reach out, to build connections with her professors and peers. Her talent with languages, which had once been a hidden gift, began to shine in the classroom. She found herself excelling in her studies, impressing her professors with her deep understanding of linguistics. It was in one of these classes that she caught the attention of Dr. Lawrence, a renowned linguist who had been observing her work from the very beginning. He approached her after class one day, his eyes filled with curiosity and admiration. "Lena," he said, "your work is extraordinary. Have you ever considered publishing your research?" The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. Lena had never thought of herself as someone who could contribute to the academic world in such a way. But Dr. Lawrence's encouragement gave her the confidence to take the next step. Over the next few months, Lena worked tirelessly on her research, exploring the connections between rare languages and their cultural significance. It was a subject that captivated her, and her passion for it only grew as she delved deeper. By the end of the semester, Lena had completed her first paper, a groundbreaking study on a language that had long been thought to be extinct. When she submitted it for review, she could hardly believe the response. Not only was it accepted for publication, but it also garnered attention from scholars around the world. Lena's work was making an impact. She had gone from the quiet, invisible girl in the back of the room to a respected voice in the field of linguistics. As the days passed and the excitement of her first publication began to sink in, Lena realized that she was no longer just the maid's daughter. She was a scholar, a linguist, someone whose work would leave a lasting mark on the world. And as she stood on the threshold of her future, she knew that she was only just beginning. Months passed, and Lena's life at university was beginning to settle into a routine. She had grown more confident in her abilities, and with each passing day, she found herself becoming more comfortable in the academic world. Her reputation as a gifted linguist began to spread, not just among her professors, but also among her peers. She had even started making friends, something she hadn't expected when she first arrived. Yet, despite her growing success, there was a constant undercurrent of doubt that lingered. She had come from such humble beginnings, and as much as she tried to embrace the world of academia, part of her still felt like an outsider. Every time she walked through the campus, she couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't truly belong. That was until one afternoon when everything changed. Lena had been invited to a prestigious conference on rare languages, a gathering of scholars and linguists from around the world. It was an incredible opportunity for her to present her research, but it also felt like a moment of reckoning. She had worked hard on her paper, the one that had been published earlier that semester, and now she would have the chance to share her work with the most respected voices in the field. The day of the conference, Lena stood nervously backstage, waiting for her turn to speak. The room was filled with accomplished individuals, many of whom had been in the field for decades. She felt small in comparison, overwhelmed by the thought of speaking in front of such a distinguished crowd. But as she stepped onto the stage and saw the sea of faces in front of her, something inside her clicked. She wasn't just the maid's daughter anymore. She wasn't the girl who had always been told to keep quiet and stay invisible. She was a scholar, someone with knowledge to share, and her voice mattered. As Lena began to present her research, her nerves slowly faded, replaced by a growing sense of purpose. She spoke about the complexities of rare languages, the connections they held to cultures long forgotten, and how preserving these languages could offer new insights into human history. The audience listened intently, captivated by the passion and depth of her knowledge. When she finished, the room erupted into applause. For the first time, Lena felt truly seen, not just for her intellect, but for who she was as a person. The conference was a turning point in her academic journey. It marked the moment when she realized that she had the power to change the world, not just through her research, but through her story. She wasn't just some girl from a humble background. She was someone who had defied expectations and built a future for herself through hard work and determination. After the conference, Dr. Lawrence, the professor who had mentored Lena from the beginning, pulled her aside. Lena, you've done something remarkable today. Your work is exceptional, and your presence here has made a lasting impression on everyone in that room. Lena couldn't help but smile, grateful for the encouragement. But Dr. Lawrence wasn't finished. I want you to know that this is just the beginning for you. You've shown the world what you're capable of, and I have no doubt that you will continue to do great things. The words meant more to Lena than she could express. She had come so far from the shy, quiet girl she once was, and now, she was on the brink of something extraordinary. As she stood there, with Dr. Lawrence's words echoing in her mind, Lena realized that the future was no longer a distant dream. It was right in front of her, waiting for her to seize it. The path ahead was full of challenges, but Lena knew that she had the strength to face them. She had already proven to herself that she could rise above her circumstances, and with every new opportunity, she would continue to break down the barriers that once held her back. As Lena continued to thrive in her academic journey, she began to feel the weight of her success in a way she hadn't anticipated. She had spent so long doubting her own worth, believing that her humble beginnings would always hold her back. But now, with every passing day, she was being recognized for her talents, not her background. She had already published groundbreaking research and made a name for herself at the conference, but a new challenge was on the horizon. Her professor, Dr. Lawrence, had been encouraging her to apply for a prestigious fellowship that could propel her career to new heights. The fellowship was highly competitive, awarded to the brightest minds in the field of linguistics, and it came with a generous research grant that would allow Lena to explore her studies even further. However, the pressure to succeed weighed heavily on her. She was no longer just trying to prove herself to her professors or peers. She was now competing against the best in the world, and the stakes were higher than ever. Lena found herself grappling with the same doubts she had experienced before. She wasn't like the other applicants, many of whom came from well-established academic families. They had resources, connections, and years of experience that Lena couldn't compete with. But deep down, she knew that her story was her greatest strength. She had overcome obstacles that many of the other applicants would never understand. Her path had been anything but traditional, and perhaps that was the key to what made her work unique. Determined to give it her all, Lena threw herself into her application. She worked tirelessly, perfecting her proposal and aligning her research with the fellowship's goals. The more she worked, the more she realized that she had something to offer the field of linguistics that no one else could. Her research was not just academic, it was personal. Her ability to see language as a bridge between cultures, as something that could transcend borders and create connections, was something that only she could truly understand. As the deadline approached, Lena's nerves reached a boiling point. She had already faced so many challenges to get to this point, and the thought of failing was almost too much to bear. But in those moments of uncertainty, she remembered the words her mother had told her before she left for college. You can do anything you set your mind to. With that, Lena knew she couldn't let fear hold her back. She submitted her application with a mix of excitement and apprehension, unsure of what the outcome would be. The waiting period that followed felt like an eternity. Every day, Lena checked her email, hoping for an update, but nothing came. She couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't enough, that her background would always be a barrier to her success. But one evening, weeks later, as she sat in her dorm room, the email she had been waiting for finally arrived. Her heart raced as she clicked open the message. To her astonishment, Lena had been awarded the fellowship. The email praised her unique approach to linguistics and her ability to bridge cultures through language. The grant would fund her research for the next 2 years, allowing her to travel, study rare languages, and continue her work. The moment Lena read the words, tears filled her eyes. She had done it. She had proven to herself and to the world that her talent, determination, and passion were more than enough. As she sat there, overwhelmed with emotion, she realized that this was the beginning of something even bigger than she had imagined. Lena wasn't just a girl from a small town anymore. She was a trailblazer, a leader in her field, and her journey was only just beginning. With the fellowship secured, Lena's world had shifted in ways she had never imagined. What started as a dream, a small hope tucked away in her heart, was now her reality. But as she prepared to embark on her new journey, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. She had once believed that her background would always define her, that the walls of her modest life would keep her from achieving anything extraordinary. Now, with the world opening up to her, Lena felt both exhilarated and terrified. The first leg of her research would take her to a remote region in South America, where a rare indigenous language was spoken, one that had only a few remaining fluent speakers. It was a field she had always been passionate about, and the opportunity to immerse herself in it felt surreal. Yet, as Lena packed her bags and prepared to leave the comfort of her dorm room, a sense of unease crept over her. For the first time in months, she wasn't just stepping into a new chapter of her life academically. She was stepping into a world where she would have to rely solely on herself. Her mother's face, always a beacon of support, seemed miles away now. Lena had learned so much since she left for college, but the thought of being so far from home made her nervous. Still, she couldn't let fear hold her back. She had a purpose now, a mission to preserve a language, to uncover a piece of human history that might otherwise be lost. Arriving in the small village, Lena felt the weight of her responsibility. The village was isolated, surrounded by dense forest and mountains, and the language spoken there was as ancient as the land itself. She was greeted by the last few elders who still spoke the language fluently. They were skeptical at first, unsure of this young outsider who claimed to know their language. But Lena's determination and genuine passion for their culture quickly won them over. Over the following weeks, Lena immersed herself in the daily life of the village. She learned the rhythms of the language, its subtle nuances, and how it connected the people to their land, history, and traditions. Each day, she sat with the elders, listening to their stories, documenting their words. The work was challenging, but it was also incredibly rewarding. As the days passed, Lena began to feel more at home in the village. The language, once foreign and difficult to grasp, now flowed more naturally for her. She began to feel a deep connection to the people, to the place, and to the language she was working to preserve. It wasn't just academic anymore. It was personal. Every evening, after her long days of learning and recording, Lena would sit by the fire with the elders. They would share stories of their ancestors, tales of bravery, love, and loss. It was during these quiet moments, away from the world she had known, that Lena realized how much she had grown. She had gone from a girl who doubted her own worth to someone who was now entrusted with the stories of an entire culture. The language she was helping to preserve wasn't just a tool for communication. It was a thread that connected generations, a bridge to the past that could offer insights into the future. As Lena sat there, surrounded by the warmth of the fire and the voices of the elders, she understood that she wasn't just making a difference in the field of linguistics. She was making a difference in the world. The journey she had begun was about more than just academic success. It was about honoring the people, the culture, and the history that had shaped her. The next day, after an emotionally charged conversation with the elders, Lena received a gift. A small hand-carved necklace made from local wood, a symbol of their trust and respect. As she held the necklace in her hand, she knew that this was only the beginning. The work she was doing in the village would ripple out to affect others, just as her own life had been changed by the opportunities she had been given. She had come here to learn, but in the process, she had discovered her own power to shape the world in ways she had never imagined. As the weeks passed in the remote village, Lena's connection to the language and the people grew deeper. She had successfully gained the trust of the elders, and with their guidance, she was making significant strides in documenting their language. But as the project progressed, she began to encounter a challenge she had not anticipated. The younger generation in the village, those who had been raised in a rapidly changing world, were no longer fluent in the language. The elders, though proud of their culture and eager to preserve it, were worried about what would happen once they were gone. The younger villagers spoke a mixture of local dialects and the national language, leaving their heritage language fading into the background. It was a harsh reality that Lena couldn't ignore. She had come to preserve the language, but now, she realized that preservation wasn't enough. She had to find a way to ensure that the language lived on, that it didn't become just another relic of the past. One evening, as she sat by the fire with the elders, the conversation turned to this very issue. One of the oldest members of the village, an elderly woman named Maria, spoke with a quiet sadness in her voice. "We are losing our language," she said. "Our children no longer speak it as we do. It is fading, just as we will." Lena felt a pang of guilt. She had been focused on the documentation, the academic side of her work, but she hadn't fully considered the emotional weight of what she was doing. To these people, the language wasn't just a subject of study. It was their identity, their very soul. The realization struck her like a bolt of lightning. She couldn't just be an outsider coming in to record their words. She had to find a way to bring the younger generation back to the language, to make it relevant again. The next day, Lena met with some of the village's younger members. She shared her concerns, explaining that without their participation, the language would eventually disappear. At first, they were reluctant. They didn't see the value in something so old, so different from the modern world they were living in. But Lena wasn't going to give up that easily. She told them stories about the power of language, about how it could connect them to their ancestors and their culture in a way that nothing else could. Slowly, she began to break through their skepticism. She organized language lessons, not just for the younger villagers, but for anyone who wanted to learn. She combined traditional language classes with modern technology, using audio recordings, videos, and even social media to make the language more accessible and engaging. The response was overwhelming. More and more young people began to show interest, and soon, Lena found herself leading a new generation of speakers. The village was buzzing with excitement as the language, once thought to be on the brink of extinction, began to take root once again. Lena's heart swelled with pride as she saw the children laughing and chatting in the language she had come to love. It wasn't just a language anymore. It was a bridge to the past, to their history, and a way to connect with their future. As the months went by, Lena's work began to gain recognition outside the village as well. Scholars and linguists from around the world took notice of her efforts to revitalize an endangered language, and soon, Lena was invited to speak at international conferences, sharing her success and the lessons she had learned. But despite the accolades and attention, Lena never lost sight of why she had come to the village in the first place. She had come to learn, to preserve, and to make a difference. And in the end, she realized that the true success of her journey was not just in her academic accomplishments, but in the way she had helped breathe life back into a language that was once on the verge of being forgotten. As Lena prepared to leave the village, she looked back at the people who had become her family, the language that had become her passion, and the work that had made her who she was. She had come to the village as an outsider, but she was leaving as a part of something much bigger than herself. She had made a difference, and the language would live on because of it. As Lena boarded the flight back home, a sense of peace washed over her. The work she had done in the village had changed not only the lives of the people there, but also her own. The language, once on the verge of extinction, was now being spoken by a new generation, and Lena knew that she had played a crucial role in its revival. The journey had not been easy. She had faced many challenges along the way, doubts, loneliness, and the weight of responsibility. But through it all, she had learned that she was capable of much more than she had ever imagined. Her path had not been a straight line. It had been filled with twists and turns, moments of uncertainty, and times when she felt like giving up. Yet, each of those moments had taught her something valuable. She had discovered her own strength, her ability to push past the limitations that others had placed on her, and she had found her true calling. As the plane ascended into the sky, Lena thought about the village, the elders who had welcomed her into their lives, and the young people who were now speaking the language with pride. She thought about the future, about the impact her work could have not just on this community, but on other endangered languages around the world. She realized that her journey was far from over. There was still so much to be done, so many more languages to preserve, and so many more people to inspire. But for now, as the clouds parted and the landscape below turned into a patchwork of fields and rivers, Lena allowed herself to reflect on how far she had come. She had gone from the quiet girl who doubted her abilities to the linguist who had revived a dying language. She had transformed her passion into a purpose, and in doing so, had found her place in the world. When Lena arrived back home, she was greeted by her mother, who embraced her tightly. "I'm so proud of you," her mother said, her voice filled with emotion. Lena smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. Her mother had always believed in her, even when Lena had struggled to believe in herself. They had both come a long way. Over the next few years, Lena continued her work, traveling to other communities, documenting languages, and sharing her research with the world. She became a respected figure in the field of linguistics, invited to speak at international conferences, and collaborate with universities around the globe. But no matter where her career took her, she never forgot the village or the lessons it had taught her. She had learned that language was not just a tool for communication. It was a bridge between people, a way to connect the past with the present and the future. Lena had also learned that no matter where you come from, no matter how humble your beginnings, you have the power to make a difference. It wasn't the privilege of your birth that defined your success, but the determination to follow your passion and the courage to face challenges head-on. As she stood on the stage of a major conference one day, addressing a crowd of linguists, scholars, and students, Lena looked out over the audience and smiled. She knew that her journey had only just begun. The language she had worked so hard to preserve had sparked something inside her, something that would drive her to continue fighting for the preservation of other languages and cultures. And just like that, Lena realized that her story was far from over. She had started as a quiet, invisible girl, but now, she was a voice that could change the world. In this captivating story, we follow the journey of a young girl from humble beginnings who rises against all odds, turning her life into one of the most inspiring millionaire stories. From her small village to a prestigious university, she defies expectations and overcomes obstacles in her path. Her passion for linguistics leads her to a remote village where she embarks on a mission to preserve an endangered language, proving that with determination and hard work, anyone can shape their destiny. As her efforts to revive the language lead to international recognition, she experiences the power of education, perseverance, and the importance of giving back. This millionaire story is a testament to the fact that success does not come from privilege, but from the courage to pursue one's dreams. Her story reminds us all that no matter where we come from, we can achieve greatness if we believe in ourselves. The journey of this young linguist will leave you inspired and motivated to overcome your own challenges. Discover how she turned her passion into a career, and how her unique journey became one of the most remarkable millionaire stories ever told. Through her hard work and determination, she not only changed her life, but also made an impact on others, proving that millionaire stories are not just about wealth, but about creating a lasting legacy.